Hi there, Vibe Gardeners. Welcome to another episode of Vibe Gardening Inform Edition, where I'm going to talk about how round two of my battle against Japanese Beetle went in 2026. With that said, let's go. All right, guys. I know my channel has been about a little over a year now, and if you guys have been following from the very beginning, which I know I don't have a lot of subscribers and audience at that point, you will have known that I've been battling with Japanese Beetle for the first time last year. And it kind of went pretty well in that I was able to get quite a bit of eggplants out of it, in that eggplants were the number one crops that Japanese Beetle went for. So this year in year two, I think I even did better. And I'm going to go over some of the strategy plans and the accidental things I ran across that helped me get the job done, and go over some of these factors with you guys so that you can see how I won against Japanese Beetles even more this year and how that might be able to help you guys. So with that, we're going to go into a couple topics. The first thing I'm going to go into is my accidental new strategy for No Mow May, which I have a whole entire video on, as the link below will share with you guys how that accidentally got me to basically take advantage of my ecosystem in my yard to help me out. And also going to go into my strategy of how I took advantage of wind with my Japanese beetle traps I talked about last year, how that helped out. And then finally, I'm going to go into my strategy of how I was able to both deter, kill, and also confuse the Japanese beetle this year with my basically killing strategy. So with that said, guys, here we go. Alright guys, so first thing I'm going to show you guys is kind of the extent of the damage that the Japanese beetle did this year, or therefore the lack of. So once we go into here, this is my eggplant community here, and as you can see, this is probably the worst they've done. Which, as you can see here, there's a bit of skeletonization going on here, but frankly, let's be honest here, that's not bad at all. We're talking about maybe less than 5% of the leaf is damaged, and this is actually probably one of the worst. And the second worst, as you can see, is this one. There's being a bit of a holes going on here, but it's, again, not really bad at all. And if we can look at the rest of these plants here, that hole I think probably is more from mechanical damage because of the perfectness of that. The little bit of chewing on the side. And really, like, we're talking about the worst I've seen. Like, this one, I think maybe a few bites here and there at most. And some of them that basically had nothing. And so yeah, the Japanese beetle really this year has not done that much of damage at all to the crops I care about. And that really shows you kind of like where we are when it comes to the actual evidence of the lack of Japanese beetle. Another thing I want to highlight too is, look, this cup here is soapy cup. It's completely empty. There's no Japanese beetle here. And it's already about 3 p.m. today on July 19th. This is only about almost 3 weeks after the first emergence of Japanese beetle. And by this point, at 3 p.m., I should be seeing the peak activity of Japanese beetle in my yard. And as you can see here, there really is no sign of Japanese beetle anywhere. This season is pretty much almost done for Japanese beetles. And, well, with nothing in the cup, and you guys see the crop here, I think I can declare this season a win to the war. Alright guys, as promised, the first thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is going to be the my strategy for the No Mow May event this year. So as I mentioned from the No Mow May episode this year, is that I discovered that No Mow May really matters more when it comes to late April and beginning of May. So at the end of May, it matters less that you're going to have No Mow May. So generally speaking, before I would not really mow until essentially well into June. So this year what I did was I was able to actually mow my backyard, as you see here. I was able to come in and clean it up a little earlier. And that is, I think, a big deal in that I basically invited a lot more birds that likes to eat grubs and ground-based animals in the yard. And that really helped control the Japanese beetle community, in that, especially with the robin community, we're able to attract with basically my neighbors having bird feeders and having nesting robins in around my house. That they really, every time I mow the lawn, it attracts all the birds to come in and essentially peck at all the grubs in ground. And since I don't use any kind of chemicals to treat my lawn to control the grubs, which is one of the best ways to control the Japanese beetle population, in that you're basically killing their babies before they become actual adults. And so what I did was, once I mow them, they basically invite a swarm of birds to come and peck at the whole yard, essentially preventing the beetle babies from coming up before they even become adults to fly around. And that, I think, is a huge factor in helping me control the population this year. So another item that really, I think, helped this year is that, like last year, I put up a lure on the trap for the Japanese beetle. And I know it's a contentious and controversial topic in the community, in that, yes, even the extension publications talk about how this may do more harm than good, in that they will lure Japanese beetle to it, but they may also attract more Japanese beetle to your yard that's already there. And but right now, with my yard specifically, as the diagram here will show, is that it is surrounded by three sides of fence and my house. It's basically enclosed space, and with the ability for this smell to propagate into other yard being fairly low. And what I did was, I actually went around my yard and I basically sniffed the spread of the scent, and I made sure that, like a diagram show, the arrow here, the arrow is actually the flow of the scent, in that it becomes a diagonal, like a jet stream, carrying the smell basically right past my garden and not able to touch it. And what ends up happening is that the Japanese beetle will fly in here. And unlike previous years, this trap is actually not as effective as the spectricide, which I will link below. And because instead of having an hourglass shaped bag here, it's a straight bag, and a lot of the Japanese beetle would end up being able to fly out of it. So it's not exactly effective. So the actual body count in here is very low compared to last year. It's only about maybe a fourth or even a fifth of what I had last year. But it still did the job, in that it attracted all the Japanese beetle into the wild strip of land I have here instead of my garden, which was exactly what I was going for. And I think that right there is a win. As you can see here, there's a bunch of Japanese beetle basically trapped right in here. And there's a lot of movement. You see the flying here? And some will inevitably fly out. It's not as much as the last couple years, but it's definitely got quite a bit of Japanese beetle in there. So one of the final things I want to talk about is my manual removal technique with Japanese beetle. So last year I showed you that I will use a soapy, foamy cup, and then I will smack the Japanese beetle into it. So I have the same technique this year. So what I would do is, I would generally notice that they start coming out between noon and 1 p.m. Eastern time, which around here is really more like Central time. So it's about noon Central time that I will come out. And what I end up doing is, at that time, only a couple will come out. And I would basically put my hand over the Japanese beetle, and you will see that the leg would raise up. And then once you see that happen, just give it a slight tap. That's when it releases its hold on the leaf or whatever it's on, and would fly into it. And I would do that at that time. And then if I can, between 2 and 4 p.m., about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I will come out again, do the same thing. And right before dinner, about 6 o'clock or so, I would do the same thing again. And that would make sure that I'm disrupting the aggregation of the Japanese beetle. Because if I do because of what happened with Japanese beetle is that they do the most harm when they start aggregating, meaning that one will show up on the leaf, do its damage, and then it will release pheromones telling its other friends that there is food here. And then more would come, and when they aggregate and they do a communal attack, that's when it's most damage on your plants. And by coming out once, twice, or even 3 times a day, what you're doing is that you're disrupting that feeding pattern of aggregating, so that you're not letting the most damaging thing happen on your plants. All right, so the final thing I want to talk about is the effect of the disruption to that aggregation that it would have on the behavior of the Japanese beetle. So one of the things that people need to realize is that Japanese beetle can feed on 200 plus, actually probably a lot more than that, plants, and more that we don't know of. So they would eat a lot of things. So last year I've noticed that eggplant is one of their favorite crops. But what happened was that when it started disrupting their aggregation, they would start getting into other things. So the first thing I noticed is right next to the eggplant are my zinnias. And it would actually like to come and I'll show you in a minute the damage they've done on zinnia flowers. They would eat the flowers and they would eat the leaves, and I would see them aggregate on zinnia instead of the eggplant. And then they would go back on the eggplant. But because I keep disturbing them, they didn't stay, right? So then I would start seeing them appear on my sweet basil or Genovese basil. And they like the flower, the leaves, and then the marigolds. And then they start appearing also on my bell peppers, my California Wonders, which is not their primary food. And I only seen two of them sit on there, but I have yet to see any real actual damage. I think that's just from them being confused. So what I end up doing is that I spread out the damage across different crops so that not a single one is getting the most damage. And I think that's also making things less disruptive on my potential yield on my harvest this year. While filming the last clip, I caught this little guy basically attacking this marigold here. And like I said, I put the cup right under it, and then I just flicked it right into it. And here we have the first catch of the day on July 19th. And honestly, I don't know if I'll catch any more today because I've really not been seeing much activity at all at the peak day. So as promised, here are some of the damage on the zinnia. As you can see, the flower petal got decimated where they had a bit of a snack. And I know quite a bit of them would also end up aggregating on this leaf right here and some of the other ones. But as we zoom out, as you can see, the whole plant itself, there's really not that much damage to the whole thing. Another crop that the Japanese beetle ended up aggregating on is this Genovese or sweet basil. And as you can see, there's definitely some feeding mark on this one leaf here. But even after I harvested a few of them from my pizza sauce right here, and it's really not showing too much damage, right? I mean, it's looking still pretty healthy. Though it did get on the flower and was eating quite a bit of it, right? So I thought, it is hard for me to even pick up damaged. Actually, no, I think I found a little bit here. There's a bit of skeletonization on these brown spots, I think. I'm not 100% sure. Or maybe I'm imagining things. But either way, this basil is barely damaged from being swarmed. And this marigold here, besides these few bite holes in here, honestly, I can't really see much of any more damage on this plant at all. And to be honest, this is not what I'll be harvesting food from. So if this can be my trap crop, that's not a bad deal. But honestly, I'm not seeing much of damage anyway. So I think we're good here. Alright guys, so I hope that gave you guys a good idea of how I was able to control my Japanese beetle population this year. In mainly that I used the ability of leveraging my local ecosystem by attracting more of the grub-eating birds to come and basically feed on them when they're still grubs before they're adults. And then I was able to plan the airflow of which my, hey there hummingbird. Anyway, that was hummingbird. And then of which the lure to the trap, the airflow of it. Because the lure itself, the trap itself is bad, but the lure is still good. As long as the airflow is properly going in that direction with the scent, that really helps out as well. And then the main key here is to be able to disrupt the aggregation of the Japanese beetle to keep them from basically exhibiting their most destructive behavior in the aggregate, and they cause mass damage in groups. As long as you can disrupt the pheromone buildup in the aggregation, you're basically disrupting the most damaging aspect of Japanese beetles. And that right there is going to save your season and actually not only disrupt them from doing the most damaging thing, it's also going to confuse them on what to even eat throughout the season. So I hope that gives you guys a good idea of how you can replicate what I've done and save your crop for the coming seasons. Please leave below a comment about how else you've been able to do to help you save your crop from Japanese beetle. And please subscribe for more content like this. And until next time, guys, keep gardening and keep vibing. Let's go.